wealthy CEO's daughter, nearly drowns Janitor's son, rescues her, and uncovers his corruption. "Don't you ever step foot in my lobby," again echoed like gunfire as Jordan Davis's heart pounded beneath the icy water. It all began at the Whitman Charity Gala, an annual display of white glove philanthropy at the Orloff Towers in Brooklyn. Seated behind James Whitman's polished mahogany desk, a shattered crystal globe sat half-cracked on the marble floor, a silent witness to every secret and every bruise of privilege. Tonight, that globe would witness something no amount of money could erase. Jordan, 17, and the son of a janitor who worked endless night shifts, had slipped away from a STEM club meeting to grab a soda at the Towers Cafe. Across the grand atrium, Maya Whitman, also 17, wheelchair-bound by a rare neuromuscular disorder, had lost control of her bespoke aquatic chair during an impromptu pool demonstration for gala donors. In seconds, the black bright lights turned from celebration to horror. Maya sank below the surface, her medical alert bleeping helplessly as well-dressed guests clutched designer purses and whispered that someone else should do something first. Instinct overrode fear. Jordan remembered his mother's words, "You fix what's broken, and you don't apologize for it." He raced across the terrazzo tile Dove Inn and cut through the water with all the desperation and power of every insult he'd ever endured. Beneath the ripples, he saw Maya's panicked eyes, and he fought not only the current, but also the weight of 100 years of systemic injustice pressing on his chest. His strong arms freed her from the sinking chair, his fingers brushing the lab property of Whitman Holdings, etched into the metal. Breaking the surface, Jordan exploded upward, Maya cradled against his chest. Her wild inhalations punctured the stunned silence as he hauled her onto the deck. Above them, the gala's spotlight cast long shadows across his damp hoodie. Stained by more than water, it was stained by determination. When Maya coughed and whispered, "Thank you," the room held its breath. This was a moment meant for the Whitman elites to applaud their own kind, not for a brown kid in a custodian's uniform. But before relief could settle in, the towering figure of James Whitman stormed forward, his tailored tuxedo, pristine, his face thunderous. "Who told you to touch my daughter?" He barked, eyes flicking from Maya's terrified face to Jordan's soaked hoodie. The shattered globe in the lobby, once a symbol of Whitman's global influence, now seemed to fracture his composure as well. Jordan stood dripping and defiant, the weight of 1,000 unspoken slights compressing in his chest. He knew that saving Maya's life would cost him more than pride. It would ignite a battle he never asked for. As Whitman's cold glare met his steady eyes, Jordan realized this was only the first ripple in a storm of justice rippling through the city. And somewhere in that icy stare lay the promise of something far bigger than a rescue, a reckoning. "Get out of my building before I call the cops." James Whitman's voice thundered through the marble foyer, but Jordan Davis felt nothing but ice in his veins. Just hours ago, that same foyer had celebrated Whitman's benevolence, as donors clinked crystal glasses beneath the fractured globe, a symbol of his empire's reach. Now every shard of that globe seemed to mock him. He had saved the chairman's daughter, and this was his reward. His mother's voicemail lit up his phone. "You have until midnight to find another place to sleep." He swallowed bile, his hoodie still damp, every thread soaked in indignation. Jordan's mind raced, replaying Maya's terrified gasp as she sank the way her cherry-red hair fanned through the pool water. He'd risked everything on instinct alone, because his mother had taught him to rise to a challenge, not cower before it. Yet, here he was booted from the lobby of opportunity, cast out for daring to cross a racial and class divide that Whitman and his peers guarded jealously. The pitying looks from gala guests still stung. Their sympathy was as conditional as their charity. They'd stood by, waiting for someone else to act. But when someone else was Jordan, they recoiled. At 3 a.m., Jordan sat cross-legged in his cramped one-bedroom apartment in Crown Heights, the glow of 3 patched-up laptops illuminating his determined face. He tapped commands into eternal lines of code, cascading like digital rain. Each keystroke was a promise, If Whitman thought he could silence him, he didn't know who he was dealing with. Cameras mounted in the lobby and private corridors, paid for by Whitman's donations, now lay vulnerable to Jordan's makeshift exploits. He remembered how the cracked globe in the foyer had fallen to the floor right before Maya toppled, a foreshadowing that even polished empires crack under just pressure. He opened a hidden port in the security network, bypassing encryption, with a snippet of code he'd written at 14. In that moment, he wasn't just a janitor's son, he was the architect of a reckoning. His mother's worn photograph sat on the desk, her gentle smile belying her fierce love. He owed her more than rent money, he owed her vindication. He whispered into the dim light, "They think this is about race. It's about accountability." A ping sounded. He'd extracted the first batch of footage, Whitman's late-night private conversations, the ones he'd sworn were secure. Jordan replayed a clip, Whitman casually boasting about teaching that kid and his mother a lesson. His stomach churned with righteous fury. Outside, the city never slept. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a community of mixed races, backgrounds, and dreams pulsed with life, and Jordan intended to give them proof that justice need not wait for boardroom votes. He drafted a plan, compile evidence leaks selectively to local activists, trigger a public outcry. But there was a risk one misstep, and he'd be prosecuted for hacking. Worse, they might retaliate against his mother. His heart thumped as he weighed choices. Yet he felt an unexpected calm, like the calm before a storm he knew he could weather. He saved the footage under the file name Shattered Globe .mp4 and exhaled. Tomorrow, the gala highlights would stream across social media, praising Whitman's philanthropy. But after tonight, the narrative would change. He had one shot to expose the truth, and he would not let fear silence him. As dawn approached, he gazed at the cracked globe image on his screen, a brittle world waiting to be remade. He clenched his fist. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow, your world shatters, Jordan muttered, eyes fixed on the progress bar creeping toward 100%. He'd just sent the encrypted footage to 3 trusted allies, a community activist, a local journalist of color, and Professor Marion Lewis, his former computer science mentor turned investigative reporter. Each copy was locked behind time-release software exactly 24 hours from now, when the gala's highlight reel would light up every screen in Brooklyn. That's when the real story would break. Jordan leaned back, heart pounding. He could almost taste the adrenaline, equal parts fear and righteous anger. His mother's soft voice echoed in his mind. "You're not just doing this for us. You're doing it for every kid told stay in your lane." He remembered the cracked crystal globe in the lobby, now a symbol of how easily ivory towers fracture under pressure. If a single globe could splinter, so could Whitman's untouchable empire. At dawn, Jordan masked his IP, slipped into the parking garage, where Whitman's loaded SUVs waited like silent sentinels. Using a miniaturized USB injector, one he had 3D printed himself, he tapped into the security server. The client app flickered, then confirmed a secure handshake. In seconds, he uploaded an anonymous teaser, a 5-second clip of Whitman's voice, chillingly casual about teaching that janitor's kid a lesson. Jordan's hands shook as he withdrew, knowing every camera feed was watching every alarm, ready to accuse him of trespass. If caught, he'd face federal charges. Yet he smiled. When wealth clings to impunity, only courage can level the scales. Back in his cramped apartment, he poured himself a cup of coffee and scrolled through news alerts. Nothing yet. The teaser was set to auto-post at 8 p.m. Until then, he had to build momentum. He drafted a blog post web page with Tyler Nguyen, the community activist, weaving narrative threads of class and race, of privilege turned weapon. He coded an interactive map showing income inequality across Brooklyn zip codes, each red hot with systemic neglect. And at the center, a tiny icon of the cracked globe blinking ominously. Then came the twist. The journalist Zara Patel uncovered that Whitman's real estate firm had secretly lobbied for zoning changes displacing hundreds of black and brown families. The map expanded to show displacement hotspots and linked to legal filings Jordan had scoured from public records. It was a narrative twist no one expected. The story wasn't just one rescue or one insult, but a pattern of systemic abuse. Jordan's heart swelled. This was bigger than a dad kicking out a janitor's kid. It was about a powerful man, tipping the scales of justice entirely in his favor. He paused, staring at the code that would launch in hours. Every variable, every hyperlink felt like a weapon of truth. The stakes had grown exponentially. If Whitman severed his internet, the map would still live on mirror sites. If he threatened his mother, Jordan had already live-streamed her testimony on community channels. He had thought through every retaliation. Still, he knew real change hinged on public outrage. As afternoon light slanted through the blinds, Jordan's phone buzzed a message from Maya. "I believe you. I'll speak tomorrow." His chest tightened. Maya's voice, once silenced, would become the crescendo. He typed back, "Be ready." Then he clicked, "Activate." The teaser dropped. Notifications exploded, and Jordan, as he watched the first ripple of outrage, felt the calm certainty of someone who knew the storm was coming and that he had already built it. By midnight, every lie he's ever told will be broadcast. Jordan whispered to himself as the live counter ticked down. In the electric glow of his laptop screen, the interactive map pulsed with red zones, each one a scar of displacement in Brooklyn. It was exactly 7:30 p.m. when the first notifications exploded across social media. Cracked Globe Challenge. Whitman exposed. Justice for Maya. Jordan watched the numbers climb, shares, retweets, comments, feeling the weight of collective outrage buzzing through the pixels. At the same moment, in the opulent boardroom atop Orloff Towers, James Whitman's phone lit up with alerts. His neatly pressed shirt clung to his back as he scrolled through the damning clip of him, boasting about teaching the janitor's kid a lesson layered over footage of Maya pleading for help. He slammed his fist on the mahogany table, sending the remaining shards of that crystalline globe rattling. That globe had been his trophy, a symbol of polished authority. But, like every illusion, it fractured the moment the truth came calling. Back in Crown Heights, Jordan stretched his stiff limbs. He'd spent days and nights crafting every line of code, anticipating every legal maneuver Whitman's high-powered lawyers might attempt. But he hadn't counted on the unexpected Maya's voice. At 8:15, a video call popped up her wheelchair framed in soft lamplight, her eyes fierce and determined. "They can't silence me," she said, leaning forward. "I'm ready to testify." The authenticity in her voice fueled Jordan's resolve. It wasn't just his fight anymore, it was theirs, a shared crusade against a system that prized wealth over human life. The twist came when Zara Patel's investigative report dropped an hour later. It revealed that Whitman's private security firm had been wiretapping residents' calls under the guise of safety measures. Suddenly, Jordan's hack wasn't just righteous, it was legally protected under whistleblower statutes. The public, hungry for accountability, roared in approval. Fundraisers for displaced families sprouted, overnight channels of support lit up, and local politicians, once silent, scrambled to issue statements. The cracked globe icon, once a mere lobby decoration, was now a rallying emblem on banners outside City Hall. But with momentum came danger. Jordan received an encrypted message from an unknown number. "Stop now, or we come for you." His heart hammered. He pictured his mother sleeping in the next room, vulnerable. Yet, as fear curled in his chest, he recalled her words. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's forging ahead, despite it. He opened his terminal, started a secure shell to mirror the evidence to international servers, ensuring it could never be erased. Outside his window, sirens wailed in the distance, police protesters' news trucks. Tonight, Brooklyn was awake. Jordan exhaled the adrenaline, settling into a fierce calm. Tomorrow, Maya would stand before a grand jury. Whitman would face subpoenas. The world would see that a cracked globe can still cast a powerful light. And, as the city pulsed with anticipation, Jordan knew the fight was far from over. "Are you ready to burn it all down?" The question hit Jordan's inbox like a seismic wave. It was from Marcus Lee, the civil rights attorney, who'd taken notice of his midnight data dump. Jordan stared at the words, heart-pounding. He knew that agreeing meant stepping into the lion's den of legal warfare, but backing down wasn't an option. He typed back, "Let's light the match." By dawn, the city was aflame with debate. Morning shows replayed the cracked globe footage on loop. Op-eds debated whether a teenage hack was vigilantism or heroism. Jordan sat in a rented conference room at Lee's small firm, flanked by Maya, her red wheelchair trimmed in protest ribbons, and Lee himself, whose seasoned calm steadied Jordan's racing thoughts. On a sleek table, the broken crystal sphere lay under glass, a trophy-turned talisman of accountability. "We have two paths," Lee said, voice low. "File a class action suit on behalf of displaced tenants, or push for criminal charges based on unlawful surveillance and coercion." Jordan's mind flicked back to his mother's stooped shoulders after eviction, to Maya's silent tears in that sunken pool. He realized it wasn't just about Whitman's punishment, it was about rewriting the rules for everyone who'd been steamrolled by privilege. "We do both," he said, surprising even himself. Filing suit was risky. Whitman's legal teams had deep pockets, and a countersuit could bankrupt them. The criminal route hinged on proving intent, something Jordan feared might get lost behind legal jargon. But Lee smiled. "The evidence is airtight recorded threats, lobbying records, network logs. You hacked into a fortress, Jordan. Now it's time to turn those codes into courtroom bombs." Over the next week, Jordan and Maya crafted victim statements. Maya described how the gilded prison of her own home had felt colder than any cell. Jordan poured out hours, detailing the nights he spent reverse engineering Whitman's security. Each line of code was a protest against a world that told him to stay in his lane. Their testimonies were filed. Subpoenas went out. The fractured globe in the lobby was officially cataloged as Exhibit A. Then came the twist. At the last minute, a third-party witness stepped forward. A former event planner from Whitman's Charity Foundation testified that for years he'd seen pattern after pattern: donation kickbacks, hush money schematics, even threats disguised as performance reviews. His statement dovetailed perfectly with Jordan's digital dossier. The courtroom buzzed. Here was an insider corroborating every stitch of Jordan's narrative. It was more than a code for justice. It was a tapestry woven from truth, betrayal, and resilience. As cameras turned toward the courthouse steps, Jordan and Maya emerged into a world transformed. Reporters shouted questions, protesters waved signs emblazoned with the cracked globe, and families displaced by zoning reforms cheered their unlikely champions. Jordan felt an electric hum in his veins, the same power that had driven him to dive into that pool, to hack into a fortress, to turn shards of crystal into symbols of change. But as he scanned the crowd, he spotted a familiar figure slipping away: James Whitman, head down, flanked by high-priced counsel. Their eyes met briefly. His dark suit now looked under siege. Jordan inhaled, savoring the moment of triumph tinged with uncertainty. The verdict wasn't in yet, and the fight was far from over. "Not guilty on all counts," the judge announced, and Jordan Davis felt the floor tilt beneath him, as if gravity itself had shifted its allegiance. In that moment, the courtroom's ornate columns and polished benches blurred into insignificance. Only the crackling electricity of justice mattered. His mother's beaming face in the front row and Maya's triumphant fist pump crystallized everything he'd risked: eviction, federal prosecution, even retaliation against loved ones. The shattered globe from the Whitman lobby stood in a glass case behind the bench, its fractured form now a testament to the empire that greed had built and the bravery that brought it down. Outside, cameras swarmed like bees around a hive, capturing Jordan's first steps into a world forever changed. Reporters peppered him with questions, but he felt the weight of every word unspoken in the collective silence of displaced families who lined the courthouse steps. He remembered the red zones on his interactive map, each one a silent scream for equity. Now, those zones pulsed with hope as local officials pledged rezoning reforms. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was a social reckoning. As journalists hailed Maya Whitman's courageous testimony and Jordan's unorthodox hack, a deeper twist surfaced. Whitman's own charitable foundation released a statement distancing itself from his actions, redirecting millions to community programs. The same foundation whose gala had showcased that pristine crystal globe now pledged to replace it with an art installation created by the very families they'd displaced. The irony was mouthwatering privilege co-opted by the people it once sidelined. Jordan's phone buzzed incessantly. University admissions nonprofit leaders, even grassroots mentors vying for his time. But amid the chaos, he replayed Marcus Lee's warning. Powerful men learn fast, but institutions learn slow. Jordan knew systemic change wouldn't hinge on one verdict. It would depend on sustained pressure. He pledged to continue building open source tools for community oversight, ensuring no oligarch could manipulate zoning codes or gag whistleblowers again. Late that night, Jordan returned to the empty conference room where he and Maya had first signed subpoenas. The cracked globe under glass reflected his tired eyes, shards catching the lamp's glow like fractured promises mended by truth. He felt the familiar tug of imposter syndrome. What did one kid from Crown Heights know about rebuilding an entire city? Then he thought of his mother, whose janitorial shifts had scrubbed away more nightmares than most boardrooms ever saw. He straightened his shoulders. Courage was contagious, and he was ready to be its carrier. But the story wasn't over. Word reached him that James Whitman's allies were exploring loopholes to relitigate zoning approvals, seeking injunctive relief to reverse displacement protections. The fight would circle back to land use hearings, political campaigns, and city council votes. Jordan exhaled, heart thrumming. The next phase would be even more treacherous, pitting data against deep-pocketed lobbyists. Maya's text flashed. "Are you in?" He tapped back always. "Do you really think they'll stop?" Jordan's voice trembled as he sat at the round table in City Hall's dimly lit committee room, the cracked globe icon projected behind him on a screen. Every council member's gaze felt like a judge's verdict, some skeptical, others sympathetic, all powerful. Since his courtroom victory, Whitman's allies had launched a last-ditch campaign to reroute housing protections, arguing that historic zoning frameworks were under threat. Now, the battle had shifted from federal charges to city ordinances, and Jordan understood the stakes. If he lost here, families already teetering on the edge would be tossed out again. He straightened his tie, an heirloom from his mother's cramped closet, and thought of her sacrifice, endless night shifts, penny-pinching lunches, and unwavering belief that one day his mind could do what her hands had cleaned away. He inhaled, feeling a clarity that only comes when your back is against the wall. "I don't just think they won't stop," he said, voice calm but fierce. "I know they can't. Because tonight we're not just defending lines on a map. We're defending the dignity of every person who's been told their place in this city." The room went silent, the kind of silence that crackles before a rallying cry. Across from him, a sharply dressed lobbyist from Whitman's new PAC tapped his pen impatiently. "Your expert testimony is appreciated, Mr. Davis," the lobbyist said smoothly. "But technical hacks and viral videos do not constitute sustainable policy." The lobbyist's words dripped with patronizing confidence, exactly the arrogance Jordan had dismantled in court. He clicked to the next slide, an animated timeline of data points, showing decreased displacement rates in neighborhoods where his open-source oversight tool had already been adopted. Each spike in community stability was marked by that broken globe icon, now a beacon of resilience rather than ruin. As he spoke, municipal attorneys tried to bury him in procedural jargon, but Jordan anticipated every counter. He described how Whitman's firm had used digital loopholes to push through rapid-fire permit approvals at 3 a.m. when public comment was technically closed. His voice held no malice, only unshakable conviction. "We wrote the code to hold them accountable. Now, we're asking you to adopt it as a public standard." The irony was delicious. He'd weaponized the same technology that once protected the ultra-wealthy to defend the powerless. Mid-presentation, a soft ping alerted him to a live feed from protesters outside a sea of signs reading "Cracked Globe, Unbroken Spirits," and "Data for the People." Their chants seeped through the open window, an electrifying reminder that justice was a living, breathing force beyond any courtroom. Jordan paused, letting their energy fill the chamber. He realized that the real power wasn't in his code, nor in council votes, but in people choosing to stand together. Then came the final twist. A surprise ally. Councilwoman Herrera, once a skeptic, rose to her feet. "I've reviewed every line of Mr. Davis's documentation," she announced, voice firm. "I stand with these families. I move to pass the Digital Accountability Ordinance effective immediately." Gasps filled the room as her motion was seconded, then passed by a narrow margin. The cracked globe icon flashed green on the screen, approval granted. Jordan felt a surge of triumph laced with humility. This was more than a legal win. It was proof that systemic change demands persistent courage and community. But he knew this victory was a step, not the finish line. As confetti streamer emojis lit up the live stream chat outside, Jordan packed his laptop, heart steady. Ahead lay the hardest battle yet, ensuring this ordinance endured beyond political terms and power shifts. He exhaled, ready for the next phase. History remembers the bold Jordan's voice echoed across the packed auditorium as the newly minted Digital Accountability Ordinance went into effect. The cracked globe icon flickered one last time on the giant screen before transforming into a full glowing sphere, a symbol of reconstruction. Tonight, the same marble floors where James Whitman once dismissed a custodian's son now bore the footsteps of community members, activists, city officials, and displaced families returning to claim their right to belong. Jordan stood on the stage beside Maya Whitman, her wheelchair draped in protest ribbons that now symbolized victory rather than confinement. He thought of his mother back in Crown Heights, tears in her eyes as she watched the live stream. Every risk he'd taken, hacking into an empire, standing up in court, battling city council, defying threats, had led to this moment of collective empowerment. Yet, he knew that real change isn't sealed by ordinances alone. It's sustained by everyday acts of courage and accountability. He recalled the globe shattering in the Whitman lobby, its crystalline shards scattering across the marble like broken promises. Now, those same fragments had been reassembled into an art installation that looped in virtual reality for all to explore. Each piece told a story of families who'd fought for their homes, of journalists who refused to stay silent, and of a teenager who refused to know his place. As he spoke, the auditorium lights dimmed, and the VR projection enveloped the crowd in a kaleidoscope of memories: pain, resistance, hope. Mid-speech. A hush fell when Councilwoman Herrera stepped down from her seat to join him at the podium. "This is not the end," she said, pulling out a stack of petition forms. "We need you, every one of you, to keep pushing to watch for loopholes to report abuses." The room erupted into applause, but Jordan's eyes scanned the crowd for signs of complacency. He saw none. Instead, he saw a movement ignited. Then came the final twist. An alert pinged on his phone from Marcus Lee, now directing a coalition of public defenders to launch workshops teaching communities how to use Jordan's open source tool. Legal support would merge with tech empowerment, ensuring that not one complaint would go unheard. Jordan realized that the empire he'd toppled had unwittingly sown seeds for a far-reaching network of civic vigilance. As the ceremony closed, Jordan stepped off the stage, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest, like a challenge rather than relief. He rolled up his sleeves mentally, mapping out the next steps, partnering with universities to refine the software, organizing hackathons for social justice, mentoring young coders from underrepresented neighborhoods. The cracked globe had become an emblem of regenerative power, a reminder that from fragmentation comes the chance to rebuild stronger. Outside the auditorium, Maya locked eyes with him and smiled. "What's next?" she asked softly, her voice steady despite the day's whirlwind. Jordan thought of the countless corners of the city still shadowed by unchecked privilege and injustice, zoning laws yet to be overturned, labor rights yet to be enforced, voices yet to be amplified. Next, he said, "We build the world they said we didn't deserve." He raised his gaze to the night sky above Brooklyn, where stars scattered like data points across an infinite network. Justice was not a destination, but a journey, one that he, Maya, and every person who dared to speak up would walk together. And as the crowd's cheers drifted into the night, Jordan stepped forward into the unknown with the calm determination of someone who knew that even in darkness, a single spark could light the way.